snap it to the pane.
Okay, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to City Property Committee. We have a full agenda tonight, so we'll get on with it and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Council President Zarella, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, given that we have many guests tonight, I would like to request that we move 034-22, the 0 Sawmill Pond Road Assessor's Map, to the front, and I don't think I need to make any other announcements, save that we will move on to public comment, if all are agreed. Okay. So, before we have Director Skorofsky off, do we have anyone here for public comment on 0 Sawmill Road? Ms. Downey, come forward. So we welcome participants for public comment, and if you can limit your comments to 2 minutes, we did receive, that's okay. If you can limit your comments to 2 minutes, that would be great, and we do appreciate the letters that people have sent, which we have on file at the clerk's office.
I'm Sue Downey. I live at 98 Sawmill Pond Road. I've been a resident here since 2008, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. We're interested in acquiring 0 Sawmill Pond to become part of our common use area for passive uses. We are concerned about it being developed as a commercial property for a number of reasons. One is the increased traffic on the short Bray Ave and Sawmill Pond areas. They're not really intended for a lot of traffic as we see it. And the ability of a commercial property to tie into our sewer pump facilities. When the property was being developed, at one point there was a request by the developer to add 18 new units and assured everyone that the sewer pump could accommodate those. It could not, it failed. He ended up being sued, and we got a new sewer system, which we have macerating pumps and a backup pump and a generator, which we maintain at a good deal of expense. I'm concerned about the effects of the environment and the expenses to our residents if there are complications or an overload by a commercial property. We would also lose control over what goes into the system. We currently send do not flush lists to we greet our new residents with do not flush lists instead of welcome to our neighborhood. We remind people at our annual meetings, and we've asked them to post it in their bathrooms because we've had issues with guests or flushing the wrong things and costing us quite a bit of money. And if we could not get this land for our purposes, we would ask that the commercial property be accessed directly from Route 31 or Princeton Road instead of coming through Bray Ave and Sawmill Pond. If they could possibly tie in directly to the city sewer system. And also, if there would be some kind of buffer, privacy fences, or that kind of thing put up between our property and the proposed commercial property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Lewis, I believe?
Doyle.
Doyle, Mr. Doyle, thank you.
Hi, my name is Pat Doyle. I also live at Sawmill, and am also a member of the Board of Trustees. One of my biggest concerns about that particular piece of property is its supposed deeded rights to tie into our pump-up sewer system. There's been some juggling of the deed over the years. It started back in 2001. I see a smile, so somebody knows about that. And I think to make things acceptable to us, if the provision, if it's still there, in the deed for this piece of property could be modified so that they do not have the right to tie into our system. whoever ends up with this property. It's actually a shorter distance from the property to Route 31, where the sewer line is, so they could certainly do a direct tie-in there. Yeah, we were interested in having the property and maybe willing to, submit an RFP. But I guess one of my questions is, what does the deed say? I've downloaded the deed, but it's still the one that's tied to the development. And quite frankly, there was an item. I've been a licensed real estate broker since 1982. I've never seen this before. A notice of withdrawal of that piece of property from the overall Sawmill Pond development. I don't understand it. I'm not expecting anybody here to try to explain it, but if at all possible, if that deed could reflect dropping that condition once you folks decide what's going to, or whoever decides what's going to happen with the property, that would be very helpful for us, whether or not we acquire the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on behalf of Sawmill? Okay, I'm going to ask Executive Director Tom Skorowski to come forward to speak on the project or the property, and Liz Murphy as well. Thanks, guys.
Good evening, councilors, and good evening, residents of Sawmill Pond. I feel weird talking in this direction when I probably should be speaking to a lot of you, but just imagine I'm looking you in the eyes here. So just a broader comment about the RFP disposition process and the properties that are in front of the property committee tonight. I had spoke with Attorney Pusateri earlier today, and he had given us a recommendation for 2 different routes that could be taken with each of these properties. Per City Code Chapter 14, you could just vote to simply declare it surplus, and then the City Council accepts that report, and it goes back to the property committee to determine disposition. Alternatively, you could put that all together in one meeting, like we're sort of suggesting in our petitions, to vote to declare it surplus and then vote to declare the disposition method all in the same evening. I think that's the preferred method, probably a little more efficient of the 2, but I just wanted to lay out the 2 alternatives. In this case, with Zero Sawmill Pond, it's about a 0.8 acre site right on Route 31, was originally permitted through a special permit from the planning board to be up to 6,400 square feet of commercial space that would be ultimately approved by the planning board. Were that option taken, ultimately, it would still go to the planning board for a final review and approval. And just to address the comment about the pump system, at least speaking internally with city staff, we all seem to agree that given the difference in grade between this property and the condos at Sawmill Pond, there would not be a need to utilize the pump system, and it could be fed through the gravity system. That being said, I think we could just as well, and I would recommend placing that as a condition of the sale through the RFP process, that they do not tie into that system. And so the petition that you have in front of you is both to declare it surplus, but also to do so through the RFP process. And the reason we want to do a request for proposal process as opposed to an auction is, with an auction, the only important factor that we can consider is price. So ultimately, we have to the highest bidder, sell the property. And I think with the RFP process, it gives us a greater degree of discretion to create a set of criteria by which we can screen out the most advantageous and the most disadvantageous proposals. And then, price is a consideration, but it is not the sole consideration. So I guess if the committee decided to declare this surplus tonight and then utilize the RFP process, what I would ask of the committee would be, what are those conditions you would like placed on the most advantageous proposals, and are there any special conditions you would like to be placed upon sale? But I'll leave it at that for now, and happy to take any questions you might have.
Councilor Van Hassinger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you mentioned that this parcel was approved as part of the original special permit for Sawmill Pond, and it was approved for commercial development. Has the zoning changed since that time? Because I looked it up now, and it appears to be zoned rural residential, which doesn't allow most commercial uses.
Correct. So the zoning has changed in the last series of zoning changes as of April of last year to become rural residential, which I think is more in keeping with a lot of the character of, certainly of Sawmill Pond in some of those areas. Given that it is still within the special permit itself, it does have that grandfathered right to still continue as a commercial site unless that were, the special permit were modified and that was removed.
Okay, so I did find the notice that it was withdrawn from the condominium, which also I've never seen. I work in real estate. I've never seen that before either. But if it's not withdrawn from the special permit, I guess that still is attached to it, correct?
Correct.
As far as we can tell.
As far as I can tell, but it seems as though other councilors may have other opinions, so.
Well, I don't know either. I don't have any, I'm just trying to figure out the situation about what the possible is. So I think going with the RFP route is the best approach because it gives us the most flexibility to do what is in the best interest of the city. I do think that we have a couple conflicting responsibilities in that we do have to look at what is the best for the neighborhood, what is, in consideration of the abutters, how that fits into the surrounding area and what the city needs there, but also we do have a fiduciary responsibility that we possess this property because someone wasn't paying their taxes. And I don't know if you know how much was owed on the property? Is that?
I don't believe it was a significant sum
Okay.
because it was a land of relative low value, no buildings on it.
So, I mean, we do have the responsibility we're selling it to try to make up the money that we've been missing. So, I mean, that is one consideration that we do have to take in addition to what we do with the property now. It affects everything else. So.
Okay, Councilor Van Hassinger? I'm sorry, Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. Do we know what date the special permit was issued?
I believe it was issued in 2001.
And nothing has been done with the property since then?
Correct.
Then I don't think it would be grandfathered because a special permit use has to commence within, I think it's 2 years maximum, though I think it can be extended. I could be mixing it up with a variance, but it's a fairly short time window, and if it's not used, it expires.
So I can't speak for every special permit process, but at least with the planning board, that's certainly something we've been working towards in recent years, have been trying to attach expiration dates to permits. There is a significant chunk of special permits issued in and around this time period that didn't have time periods associated with it. And, there's also conflicting views as to whether substantial completion or had pulled permits on the entire scope of the project, because it wasn't just approving that 6,400 square feet, but it was the full development, which is substantially complete. And at least by our reads internally, we feel as though there is a right for a property owner to develop 6,400 square feet of commercial space, which is to say, I'm not saying that is the desired end use or that's what it should be, but from our read, that seems to be a right that would be inherent in this were we to deed it to a proposer.
Okay, so, yeah, I think in light of that, I think that on this item, my recommendation is going to have to be to hold it because I would like to research that issue. I want to know exactly what the permissible uses we might be approving would be before we vote on it. And again, Mr. Skrowski may well be correct. I am far from infallible. But my recollection is that the time limit is by operation of law, not a condition placed by the permitting authority. And my gut is that commencing use of a permitted commercial use is distinct from the completion of the residential uses that were permitted under the same authorization. But I don't want to jump down that, rabbit hole here tonight when I am just talking off the top of my head either. So I think I would like to have the opportunity to look into this further, or declare it surplus tonight and hold off on disposition. I see no problem with declaring it surplus. It definitely is. But as far as final disposition, I don't think I'd be comfortable voting either way on it tonight. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Squalia.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Zarella. I have a few questions I'd like to ask Ann Cervantes, but she's not here, regarding the tax. And specifically, I would like to know the answer to that question, to be certain for your special permit question. But considering that Tom is correct, and RFP process is the correct method, as Councillor Van Hazinga said, Tom, would you mind just explaining to the residents of Sawmill Pond how they would go through with submitting a proposal for that property?
Sure. Is this not being broadcast on FATV?
It is being broadcast.
Okay, I'm just trying to be mindful of how much I need to be speaking into a microphone as well. So the RFP process would be managed through the Department of Community Development and Planning, and administered through the purchasing office through Mary Delaney, our Chief Procurement Officer. So essentially what would happen is we would develop a request for proposal document that would state what the most advantageous, what the advantageous, what the least advantageous, and what the not advantageous uses of the property would be, as well as a host of other conditions. So we set conditions for what uses we'd like to see. We set conditions for the character, the past experience, the financial feasibility of a development. So we're making sure we're not just approving an idea that we really like with a developer that doesn't have the capacity to fulfill the work, or doesn't have enough money to get the work done, or has a bad track record. So we really look at all of those factors, the proposal, the proposer, the price, and all of those pieces together holistically, an internal group of city staff. We create that RFP, put it out, and then any willing proposals can submit a proposal through the Chief Procurement Officer's online portal, and then those proposals are opened up at a date, shortly thereafter, the deadline, and an internal city staff group basically decides which proposal best aligns with all the characteristics we set out in the RFP document, and then it would go back in front of the City Council for a final vote, whichever proposal is declared the most advantageous for the city.
Thank you. Additionally, have you looked at the sewage system in the Main Street? This is at a higher level, so is there available sewer to connect on Princeton Road?
And that's definitely something that requires further analysis, but our initial read is that we believe this could tie into the gravity line, but we would have to check with our DPW. And frankly, even without those investigations, or even without full investigations as to the issue about the commercial use, the property committee could also place conditions on what use they want to see or don't see, and whether they would or wouldn't want to see something tie into the pump system. So those are, I think, valid considerations to be made when putting together the criteria.
Thank you. I would be in favor of holding completely, or in favor of declaring surplus and then holding on the RFP.
Okay, Councilor Boschman? Nothing to, all right. So I just want to reiterate, I guess, what we've discussed, so it's clear in my mind as well as those of the viewers and folks here. So what we have before us is a piece of surplus property that is at a different grade than the Sawmill Pond development. And we are discussing the advantageousness of an RFP, a request for proposals for that property. That's part of what we're discussing here. And a couple of questions that councilors did want answered, or just information provided in the future, as is possible, is that what is the zoning change? How does that affect a decision we might make? Also, how much it was owed on the taxes. So that's a question people wanted answered as well. And Tom has explained the RFP process. I think we're all pretty clear on what that would look like. And then finally, the sewer system would need to be investigated, so that would be Nick Erickson and his department looking, and can it tie into the grounding line, since the Sawmill Pond residents have been extremely clear about the limitations of the sewerage in their development. So we thank you for that clarity. I think we're probably ready to bring this to a vote, so Councilor Zarella.
Very briefly, first I just wanted to apologize for the fact that I was staring at my phone a moment ago. I was actually making notes, not just texting people. But I did neglect to mention when we first started this, I received a text earlier today from Rosemary Thibodeau, who said she could not make it tonight because she is not feeling well. I don't have her exact address, but she says she lives in Sawmill Pond, and that she fully supports the proposal of the Board of Trustees. I promised her I would bring that up for her, and I just wanted to make sure that I did so that it gets on the record.
Thank you. I also received mail from the Liddy family and also the Smith family, and Sharon Bernard as well. So we heard from a number of residents, all of whom expressed the same concerns very eloquently. So if anyone has any further thoughts, I think we could probably put this forward as a motion.
Make a motion to hold 3422.
Second.
Hold on. Is this a motion to declare surplus property and hold until the next meeting while we can explore an RFP?
This is a motion to hold the petition.
Second.
Hold the petition in entirely?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, will you guys be able to move forward on language of an RFP, again, foreseeing that, would have a meeting within 4 weeks, I would say? Since the rule for council, for subcommittee meetings, we had within two meetings to get this forward and back to the council. So I think if we hold another meeting, maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, and we've had a chance to explore this, and then see, everyone can get their questions answered. Does that sound reasonable? I'm going to ask Councillor Van Housinga, would you be willing to declare this surplus property, and then, because we have gotten the go-ahead from city solicitor?
Well, my concern would be that we should know the whole story before we declare it surplus, because we would like to know at what stages do we have the ability to put guidelines or conditions, whether it's before the RFP or before we start the process. I think it just makes sense where there's a lot of questions, maybe we just hold it now. And
I want to turn that to Tom. Again, is it?
I think that's completely acceptable, and I think, hopefully what we'll do with some of the other properties tonight is vote to declare it surplus and vote on the RFP itself, and there's no reason why we couldn't do that at a future meeting. One thing that would be helpful for us, I think, I'm hearing loud and clear, and we can include something in the RFP regarding not tying into the sewer system. We can be quite explicit about that. I would hope to get some more guidance from the committee as to the use that we would like to see here, because ultimately that's going to be the most important piece of the RFP that we're crafting. So I think, I outlined there may or may not be a commercial use permitted through this project.
Right.
That isn't to say it is the most desirable use. It could be, depending on the sentiment of the committee, but it might be helpful to get a sense of what you all feel would be appropriate so we could craft the best RFP that could go in front of you for approval.
Okay, do we want to discuss that now, or do we want to kind of sit with the project for a month and do our
Sure,
explorations?
I'd make a motion, withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you.
And I would suggest that we wait on proposing any conditions for the RFP until we understand what the full range of options is, because frankly, in the current sort of status of my sphere of knowledge, I wouldn't know where to begin with crafting desirable uses or undesirable, except insofar as one condition I know I would like to see is minimal negative impact to the nearby residential community.
Okay, good to know. Councillor Squalia.
Yes, I concur with Councillor Zarella. I'm amenable to potential proposals of the area. Maybe the best proposal is for the association to take it over. Maybe the best maybe there's another proposal that has a commercial development option per the special permit if it's allowed. So, I'm open to direction.
Okay. Councilor Van Hazinga.
I think it is located on a busy state route, so I think it does have some promise for commercial development, so I would be open to that, but I would make it one of the priorities that has minimal detrimental effect on the neighboring residential development, just because it is in close proximity. And even though the withdrawal from the condominium does outline that has rights of access and sewer and things like that, if it were to be a commercial use, I would like to see it self-contained and directly from the street and not through the development. But that being said, it may not be a market for that. Maybe the best use is as a residential development. Maybe it's a continuation of the condos. Maybe it's just excess land for the condos for a buffer recreation, something like that. But any of those would be open.
And I would say, given that the planning board has to approve, theoretically, if there is the right to build commercially, I think I can say pretty confidently tonight that whatever commercial use could hypothetically take place there would front on 31. It wouldn't access the existing roads of Sawmill Pond. I sincerely doubt that would be a proposal that the planning board would approve of.
And the types of commercial use that would seem to be most beneficial to the city there would be something that supports the Great Wolf Lodge and the other traffic coming and going to the city. I don't think it would support, any kind of manufacturing use or any industrial use. I don't think it would support a lot of things, because it is a relatively small site. It's less than an acre. So, I mean, it'd have to be really a small scale, something that capitalizes on the traffic coming and going. It's outside of that, it's a bit out of the way. It's not, no one's gonna have a dentist office there or a bank branch. It's just, that doesn't make sense. So we'll see if anybody steps forward with a grand idea for it, but it very well may be the neighbors are the most appropriate buyers.
So I feel like I've got enough clarity from the committee here. We can do a little bit of research on the zoning piece, the sewer, and actually give you a full outline of what is possible at the site. And we'll put together an RFP. It will be pretty agnostic on the use, and we'll lean on the committee once you get a sense of what's possible there to help us fill in the blanks at that meeting.
Okay, I'll type up the questions and email all of us so that the questions we have are what was discussed tonight. And I think, do we have a motion to?
Make a motion to hold 3422?
Let him, sorry.
Second.
And just before we get, I should have said before we started this meeting, we don't have a designated city person. Can I ask one of our esteemed members to take minutes for us tonight? I can take minutes, but it's a little bit like juggling 4 balls, which is one more than I can do.
Sure, I can do minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Van Hazinga. Please conclude your motion. A motion to hold the,
3422.
okay.
Second.
And Councillor Boishman does a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the motion is passed, so we are holding this for the next month. Thank you, Tom and Liz, then thank you all for coming out. Stay tuned for more.
Thank you. Thank you.
All righty, so we now have, why don't we'll start at the start and move on to 195-21, which is the declaring 0 Daniels Street, parcel 77410 surplus property, and designate the property for sale through the side yard sales program.
All right. So this property is about 2,300 square feet. It is between the former American Legion, which is now a Pentecostal church, and another commercial enterprise. And, basically, I guess it also could be a potential access point for the 0 Beach Street 16-unit townhome development that was approved by the planning board just this past year. So there's 3 different potential users of the site. This would get cured through the side yard sales committee as they're reviewing the proposals, which of the 3 would be most beneficial. But it's land of low value. It can't really be developed into anything else, so it seems most appropriate to dispose of it through this process. So again, this is really 2-step: to declare it surplus and then to dispose of it through the side yard sales program.
I had a question.
Okay, Councillor Boishman, and then Councillor Squiglia.
Tom, again, we talked earlier about that, and I mentioned that thing. As long as I have no problem going to a side yard sale, but I would prefer on the side yard sale that all the abutters get the opportunity, and if it goes two abutters, they split it down the middle so nobody can put a fence up and stop one from the other to go in and out. You got a commercial business there, Blue Joe's, that runs landscaping. You get the church, and then, of course, if I was the guy that was building the project up on the hill, I would seek the right-of-way that goes through and go up that way for a shortcut to eliminate a lot of the traffic going on Beach Street. You may not think it's a lot of traffic, but you get company coming and everything else, so there'd be a lot of traffic. So I'll vote for the surplus. I got no problems, as long as the planning department, when they do it, makes it very clear on that.
So one thing just to note, I guess how this is different than all the others, the planning department, planning and community development, we did submit the petition here because this issue was flagged with neighboring property owners to go through the process. But in this case, it would actually, going through the side yard sales program would go to the side yard committee and wouldn't, community development and planning wouldn't really have any jurisdiction over the disposition process. It would go through that committee.
Can the committee, Madam Chair, would it be able to put some notes down for the committee to go by to make sure our concerns, or my concerns, because I got 3 adjacent properties there that might be interested in that piece?
Certainly the case. It just won't be our consideration. I'd be happy to even relay that information to them.
All right. Okay, I'll live with that, as long as they get the message.
Councilor Boishman, you must have a copy of the side yard sales handout?
No, I don't have one.
Here, I've got one here. Okay. Nope, I don't, I'm so sorry. But Ann Cervantes, treasurer, has that. So I'll ask her to email that to both of us, so I have it on email too. Okay. Anything further?
No, that's it. I know how the side
How it
yard sale
works.
works.
Yeah.
I already know how it does. I'm just saying, I just want to make sure that, just because I don't want to bid on the property, I want to make sure there isn't a fence that goes down the middle where the guy up above can't use it if he elects to use it. If he asks it to say, okay. That's all I want to make sure.
One thing I can say, when you purchase a property, you buy the rights to that property,
Right.
which is, a bundle of sticks, right? And one of those sticks is the right to access in and out. And if you're not the owner of those sticks, you can't utilize that right. The alternative is the right for an easement for them to pass through while the property owner retains all the other rights therein. So if one person bought the site, they could do whatever they wanted on it. But if they bought the site and then provided an easement to a neighboring property owner, then they could pass through.
Right.
But without that easement, they have no rights to do so.
Right, I understand that. I also understand how it works. So let's presume that Boschman buys it, and Boschman doesn't want the church to use it. I mean, you get two different parties right there butters, and usually it's hard to say, you buy half and I buy half. That's the thing, and then you get the guy on top of the hill.
Right. So I think the committee would be the best group to kind of resolve these competing conflicts, my thought.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, you're the floor.
Point taken.
So my question just kind of stems from Councilor Boschman's question. What if the church and Boudreaux's and the potential townhouse development all wanted access for this property? If they all wanted it, as they all are abutters, would it split three ways? Would there be an easement attached for access for the Beach Street? Zero Beach Street property? How does that typically work in the side yard sales program?
So I'm seeing
Councilor Zarella may have the answer.
I'd be happy to respond, but I'm just reading the room here.
Well, thank you. If you don't mind, Counselor.
Love to.
So,
Oh, sorry about that. It's Joe Biden.
So, up until recently, I was the chair of the Side Yard Sales Committee, and basically, the committee can authorize the disposition of the property in pretty much any configuration the committee deems appropriate. We've had instances where multiple people all want a parcel and only one of them gets it because they have the best proposal. We've had others where there is a negotiation between the parties and they say, all right, well, we'll take this portion and you'll take this portion, or even we'll go in on it together and work out easements and rights of, you can do anything. The Side Yard Sales Committee, or Commission rather, can set it up however the parties are amenable to, and then that would get written into the deed, or deeds plural potentially if it were to be chopped up.
So the three abutters will be notified of the side yard sales potential. They will come to the meeting or submit a proposal in advance.
The latter.
Yes. Well, they wouldn't necessarily submit it in advance. They fill out the sheet that says the general parameters of what they're looking to do, but the details of the proposal are sometimes just brought to the commission meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask the...
I just want to hear from Councilor Van Housing. I just wanted to make sure we didn't overlook you while we go on to second question.
No, I have no comment at this time.
Okay, thanks.
So
Councilor
let
Boschman.
me understand this, because I've seen times when you had an abutter, and I was told that when they started this program on a side yard sale, they went to the highest bidder. That's what I was told. And then they take into considerations. And just because I'm the highest bidder doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get it. It could go either way. That's what I was told when I first started, when they first came out with the side yard sale.
Madam Chair, may I?
Please.
So if I am recalling correctly, and I would invite either of our very diligent city officials to correct me if I'm wrong, if I recall correctly, there is a fixed price for the side yard sales. It can be modified under certain circumstances, but generally there is no bidding going on.
Didn't we raise it to 1,000? Didn't we raise it from 300 to 1,000?
The document I
Thought
have,
about it. I don't know if we did. I can't remember, to be honest.
the document I have states it's 300, and that the other considerations include everything from, did the potential purchaser not pay their taxes or have building or zoning issues in their past, which would have an impact on the decision of the side yard commission. So it's not strictly dollars.
And I think,
Excuse me, Madam Chair, let me explain something. It goes by, it's $300 right off the bat. That's the initial bid. But if there's two property owners, like let's use at Kimball Street, just a while back ago, there were two property owners that were competing for the property. And it was supposed to go to the higher bidder, to the highest bidder. But the guy on the right of him said no. He didn't. He said, forget it, I don't want it. If I can't have it all, I don't want none of it. So he didn't want to split the property. But it does go to what I was told, the whole purpose of the SIS was to go to a highest bidder. Why would you give away a piece of property if Councilor Craig, Sally over here wants to buy it for $10,000 and I only want to pay $1,000? It's kind of crazy.
so the thought process with the program is it actually is land of low value.
Yeah.
And the intent is similar to the RFP process in a way. It's the end use that we're looking to achieve, not necessarily a dollar value, in which case we would go to dispose of it through the auction process. So this provides the city with a greater deal of discretion over how to deal with the end use of a property. So we can choose the one that best serves the interests of the adjoining property owners, the neighborhood, and the city at large, as opposed to just who's willing to pay the most money.
Yeah.
But like an RFP, that can be a consideration. It is not the holistic consideration that the committee's looking at, though.
So anything further on this, Councilor Zarella?
First, just to that point, yes, at least when I was on side yard, our primary goal was not to maximize revenue or anything. These are parcels that are very low in assessed value, higher than $300 usually, but not high. This isn't something that's going to make any meaningful impact on the city budget. So usually instead, what we were looking for was which proposed use will best address the needs of the neighborhood. So let's say one person says, I want it because I'd like to have a slightly larger yard for my dog to run around in. And another person says, I have no off-street parking. I want to construct a driveway here. We'd probably give it to the second person because giving it to them takes cars off the street and declutters the neighborhood. Whereas the person who, wants more space for their dog, it's a worthy use, but it's only going to help them. It's not going to help the rest of the neighborhood. And so that's generally the sort of thing, at least in my experience, that the committee looks at. Going back a step, though, with regard to rights of way and so forth, I do just want to reiterate that really ownership is ownership. You can certainly have a situation where the different abutters do, as I said, negotiate amongst themselves in front of the committee or on their own and then come back to the committee and say, yeah, we're going to take this with the right of way to so-and-so and this other parcel gets to park in this spot or whatever. But assuming they don't do that, they have full control. And that's really necessary because if you think about it, who would buy a non-developable lot if we told them, you'll be the owner on paper, but you have to let everyone else use it? Why would you pay money for that?
Yeah, I understand. No, I understand.
So that said, though, unless I am cutting anyone off, I will make a motion to grant petition, or to recommend the granting of petition 19521.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. We will next move on to 0 Taft Street.
Great. So 0 Taft Street is actually two properties, parcel 24-3 and 24-2. The former is about 5,003 square feet. The latter is 10,003 square feet. So taken together, we've got about 15,000 square feet between the two parcels. And Liz has put together a great RFP proposing to dispose of this with the intent to sell it to a nonprofit who is developing housing. So, to give you a sense of what's possible, this is in the RB district. Single or a two-family is allowed to be developed by right. A three or multifamily development by special permit from the planning board. And in terms of dimensional regulations, your minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. To develop by right, 5,000 square feet to develop an infill, which is a single family, through special permit through the planning board. And Liz, do you have anything more to add about the RFP you put together?
Just that we would be looking for a proposal that would allow for 2 single-family homes.
So one through the infill process and one through
Correct.
Just by right development.
Yep. Councilor Zarella.
So, again, I don't want to jump the gun on anything. In this case, I'm happy to approve it one way or the other, but I'm a little uncertain about the logistics of using the infill process here, because I believe that when we changed the infill ordinance, we made it so that you couldn't use it, you couldn't carve off a piece to use specifically as an infill lot, and if one person takes ownership of a substandard lot and a conforming lot, they merge, so then they'd be ineligible to use the infill process. We may want to structure, if the goal is to get 2 single families on the lot, we may want to do it, be creative, do it in maybe a phased process where, build one house, unload it to someone, then buy the other parcel so that it remains an eligible infill lot. But this is just entirely off the cuff, so I don't have a detailed proposal. I just thought I should flag that issue.
Oh, it's an important consideration.
Right.
Thanks for flagging that.
Yeah, exactly. So this would be in the clerk's office, this would be in our ordinances. It would be within our ordinances. So this is something.
181.
Now, I'll ask the lawyer in the room. Were an entity to purchase 2 of these properties, but they were under different LLCs, would that be considered different ownership by purposes of the zoning ordinance?
I would have to look up merger doctrine again, but I think that could potentially solve the problem.
Okay.
Okay, so, one sec, Councilor Squillia, I just want to get so what we need to find out is the precision of the language of that ordinance, and then the possibility of creating two properties that then could be
Disposed of.
developed subsequently. Okay, thank you. Councilor Squillia.
Thank you. I remember in 2018, Solicitor Pusateri came before us with a proposal to adjust the side yard sales so that 2 lots didn't have to be merged, or because normally they would have to be merged, but there was a proposal before us discussing the expenses of the tax title and noting that they didn't have to be merged. Now, I don't know if that same, I know we passed that, but I don't know if that applies to this same consideration.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Please, yeah.
So that applied specifically to the side yard sales program. it would not, of its own force at least, apply to alter the merger doctrine in general in the city of Fitchburg. In fact, I think that's a state statutory thing, so we may not even be able to alter it beyond certain parameters. I'd have to check.
All right, so it seems like we have a bit of research. Councilor Van Hazinga.
Is this proposed redevelopment dependent on being able to develop 2 lots in this location?
No, and actually, the RFP does say 1 or 2 affordable, newly constructed, energy-efficient, single-family homes. So it could be 1.
Okay, because I think single-family home development would be fantastic. That's what I'd love to see here, especially in this area. There are topographic concerns. It's a very steep street, so there may be requirements with keeping the lots level and supporting development. So it just may not be feasible to put 2 houses there, so maybe 1 house is all we get out of it.
And I do think if that were a concern through the RFP process where somebody did want to develop 2, at least if we've flagged this as a potential issue, it could be a consideration we make as to how we want to phase the closing process even. Or theoretically, this also could be a developer that is a little bit more sophisticated and might have the ability to, which developers often do, is developing through different entities, so it's not necessarily under common ownership.
So these parcels do abut an existing multifamily parcel that I always assumed that this was connected to that building, but I guess not. That doesn't have any off-street parking. Has any discussions occurred with that property owner?
No, and I did notice that as well, that the flat area that almost looks like it was a demo of another building, but I couldn't find any evidence of that, has become a parking lot for the adjacent multifamily there. And that's something that we will have to talk to them about.
And I will say, occasionally there is a car parked in there or 2, but for the most part, it's not used. It houses trash barrels, and all the cars are on the street there. So if we're in the situation where only 1 building lot will be possible in this, if we could cut out a smaller lot that the adjacent multifamily owner may be interested in acquiring to use for off-street parking to get some of those cars off of the street, that would be a benefit to the neighborhood, but this gets dependent on cooperation with other property owners, and just something to investigate.
And we also could include in the RFP language to, as the most advantageous use would be something that also provides a benefit to the adjoining property owner. And then that might trigger in a developer's mind that that's something we would be looking for, and they could be a little bit more proactive, so as opposed to the reactive approach once we get the proposal from them.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Boschman?
One question. How strict are you guys going to be on a nonprofit buying that, getting that property versus a regular guy that builds houses?
Well, I guess I would say it can be difficult for nonprofits that are developing affordable housing to be able to acquire property inexpensively, and just buildable lots that are in the neighborhoods that are walkable is a challenge to find a lot that you can build on. So our intention was to create a unit of affordable housing and potentially provide some of our home program funds towards that, but without having an identified nonprofit to do that. We have to wait and see who bids.
Okay, Councilor Squiglia.
Thank you. Just one more question for these 2 potential lots. If you couldn't separate them out into 2 single families, would it be in the consideration for a duplex townhouses proposal?
It would be allowed by right, so at least from a zoning perspective, and I think if it's still satisfied, I think the intent here is to provide for home ownership, which is not to say you couldn't have that in a townhouse that was condoized.
Yep.
So I think we would still like to see home ownership. That's what we would be supporting with home funds, but I think it could be accomplished in a few different ways.
So that could be something that you would consider.
Yes, and it has been done in the past. Nonprofits have built duplexes and had them be condos and sell them individually as home ownership units.
Okay.
Okay. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I did just want to follow up on what Councilor Boschman mentioned. I have no problem including nonprofit in the RFP or anything, but I am curious as to whether the city's goals would be equally served by simply saying affordable housing. Like, does it have to be a nonprofit, or could it be a developer who's willing to make it an affordable single family? I don't have anyone in mind. It probably would end up being a nonprofit, but you know, I'm wondering if it makes sense to strip away any restrictions that aren't strictly necessary to accomplish the goal.
I feel as though if the goal was to produce affordable homeownership, in all likelihood it would be a nonprofit, because the most profitable thing would not be to build affordable homeownership. So it might just be two ways of saying the same thing here.
In that case, I think my preference would be to just specify affordable housing, because I'm always sensitive to the corner case. You know, who knows? There may be a philanthropic individual or something who wants to come in and build affordable housing. I don't know. I'm just saying, if there's no need for it to be restricted to only nonprofits, and you think nonprofits will self-select anyway, then why not just open it up to everyone and let the nonprofits self-select, while leaving it open to any odd case that we haven't thought of.
A question, is our precedent when we have done RFPs for affordable housing, have we used specific language about nonprofits versus just developers, or is this?
In the 15 years that I've been here, I don't know that we've had an RFP for affordable housing.
So this is a first. Well, that's very exciting and wonderful. Thank you.
I think Liz identified a great opportunity for this site to produce some real value for the neighborhood, and hopefully this is a sign of more to come.
Yeah, and I'd just like to offer an alternative point of view, Councilor Zarella and company, because this is the first, and we are initiating something new. I have no issue with using the word, you know, nonprofit seeking to build affordable housing, if that's going to attract the nonprofits here for this exciting new project.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome. Anything else, Councilor Zarella?
I just want to know, I will be in favor of it regardless, whether it includes the word nonprofit or not. I'm just expressing preferences, not sine qua non.
Well, again, I don't think any motion would really take into account any future advertising or text to be used for this project, because that is your purview, and our purview is simply the disposition of the property. So,
Great.
but I didn't. That was a detail. That is very pleasing to hear. Are we ready for a motion on 0 Taft?
Sure, I'll make the motion to grant petition 00822.
Second.
Okay, I think Councilor Squalia got the second. I heard just like it was a microsecond. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Let's move on to 50 Granite Street, which is another nice steep street.
And this part of parcel 8260, it's in the RC district. It's 7,200 square feet. It was the site of a 2015 demo, and now is a corner lot within that neighborhood. So the RFP that was submitted along with the petition, you know, spells out some potential uses for the site. In terms of zoning, there's really two primary uses we might see here. One would be a single-family home, because it is 7,200 square feet in the RC district. The minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. And the alternative use here, in all likelihood, would be parking for, you have a number of large multifamilies that do not have any parking. I can think of one in particular that we have, explored the possibilities of demolishing because it's sat dormant for over 20 years, but the problem is it is safe, it's buttoned up, it's secure. From a regulatory standpoint, we can't demolish a property that fits all of those criteria. The reason it sits vacant is because it doesn't have parking, and this is just a half a block away. So I think parking could be a good opportunity for a site like that. It's also a neighborhood that I think could benefit from a great homeownership opportunity.
Okay, Councilor Squalia.
Are there two vacant lots on the either side of that end of Granite and Salem? Do we own both of those, or?
I don't believe we do. I could be mistaken, though.
This is,
Yeah.
well, I have a map here from GIS. It still has the building located on the map, but it's not there anymore. It looks like there are no other vacant lots around it, but again, this map has the building still on it, so I couldn't maybe judge by this map.
Yeah, my image is from 2018.
It's a long lot, so there's a lot
Yeah.
of green
This
space
is this
behind
one,
it.
right?
I don't know, there's two.
50
Is it
Granite?
on the Main Street side of Salem, or is it on the up the street side of?
It's on the corner of Granite and Salem.
Right, is it closer to Main Street, or is it?
Closer to Water Street?
Yeah, Water Street.
Yeah, closer to,
Yes.
yeah.
Away from Water Street.
It's away from Water Street if you're talking about Salem, right? So,
Could I
yeah.
give you
could
the
we
map?
just show the map to the
And
FATV?
my map on the,
I'm looking at Google Street View, and there's a multifamily tan house with cinder block foundation casement, and then there's
okay, it's
a
this
blue
one.
house.
Yeah, it's that one,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
There's that long lot.
yeah, so
Okay.
this one over here, do we own this one too? My map's not loading.
Wow.
Well, I already know, because I looked at that lot, the one we pointed out. I wouldn't want that for parking.
For parking? Yeah, this looks like a lot that a single-family house
Yeah.
could be on.
Question, can I ask you?
Yes, please.
Question for you. What house in the you said there's one house in the neighborhood that doesn't have any parking? Why would you want to take a good lot like that and make parking out of that lot? When I was up there and I looked around and I saw it, and I picked the right lot. It's the one in front of the gray house.
Oh, sure.
It's not the most advantageous use. It's just one of several that we allow, but the most advantageous use that we would be looking for a proposal for would be a single-family home.
Well, I'm in favor of a single-family home.
I think it's more about just keeping our options open so we have the discretion
One on the right.
to decide the best
I already
option.
looked at it. I saw it when I went down and checked it out.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I make a motion, we accept.
So, are we accepting and allowing, and doing the RFP process, or just accepting the petition as written?
Well, we have, the petition is just accepting a surplus property. So we don't have the RFP process here on this?
So
Would you like
it was,
us to-
I believe it was included in the petition as submitted. The language stated to declare it surplus, and then the petition as language, as well as the RFP stated further the process by which we could do it. So again, as I mentioned at the outset, you could simply declare it surplus and then in another meeting determine the method of disposition, or you could bundle that together in one recommendation for the council tonight.
Councilor Zarella?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, aside from 19521, which we dealt with I believe all of these, well, not 175, of course, but all of these surplus property ones do include it in the full petition request to send to RFP.
With the exception of 491 Main, which I'll explain in a few.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yep, Councilor
Are
Bershman.
we going to do the same thing like you want to do on Taft Street? Put this out for affordable housing on that street? No? Was there any reason why not?
Well, we had two. We thought one affordable housing, one market rate housing. It's
Or
nice to
at
have
least
a mix.
leaving the options
Right.
open for the second one.
Right. There's nothing to preclude a nonprofit from building affordable housing. We just wouldn't make that exclusive to nonprofits or affordable housing.
As
Unless
Liz-
the recommendation is to make a change.
As Liz had mentioned, we'd never proposed an RFP solely for affordable housing, so we were treading lightly, it being our first opportunity to do this, and wanted to just offer diverse options to the committee.
Okay. Councilor Scalia.
Just to confirm, on the petition, it says, the petition is to declare it surplus property. And then it references a letter where it says, if declared surplus, we intend to dispose of these properties through the RFP process. But that's not specifically stated on our agenda, and it's just really included in a letter that's accessory to the petition. Do we also have to specify that to make it very clear, or not?
Sally?
Oh, Anthony, sorry. Councilor Zarella, please.
Are you asking from an open meeting law standpoint or from a standpoint of making the vote effective?
Both.
Okay, so from an open meeting law standpoint, I think there's adequate notice given of what the committee will be discussing, because discussions of surplus property usually include some disposition. And as far as the vote, it certainly couldn't hurt to specify, but if we were to just say that we're approving the petition in its entirety, that would presumably include approval of the request made in the letter.
I would say Attorney Pusateri had recommended that were you to take that second leap and also request that it be declared surplus and sold through the RFP process, that you would include all that language in the vote that you take.
Okay.
Then I make the motion that we accept the RFP and surplus.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. And now, we are on Main Street.
Alrighty, 491 Main Street. This is at the corner of Main and Oliver. This is in the downtown business district. It's adjacent to, or at least just across the street from the city-owned soon-to-be parking lot on Elm Street, and of course across from the existing garage on Main Street. It's over 30,000 square feet in total between two separate buildings. And we are proposing to sell this as well through the RFP process. The reason you do not have an RFP in front of you is because we received notice that we own this property about 2 weeks ago, but given all of the other properties going in front of the property committee, and frankly, given the priority that we put on this site, we wanted to get it in front of the property committee as soon as possible. This is a site that's been in land court for years and has owed significant sums to the city, well over $100,000 in back taxes, and of course plays a really important role right in the heart of our downtown. What we would like to see is an end use. We don't have an RFP for you to look at, but in terms of experience, competency, financial capabilities, all of that is sort of uniform across all of the RFPs you looked at. The one thing we'd like to see here, just in terms of the most advantageous use, we'd like to see something that embraces a mix of uses, residential uses on the upper stories and commercial use on the first floor.
Councilor Scalia.
Just to clarify the letter that was included in the petition, it says, It says, "We would intend to request proposals to developers for the creation of a single-family home or parking for nearby property owner." That's not correct, right?
That's 50 Granite Street. Is that what?
491 Main Street?
It still made it into the letter.
Wonderful. That's not the intent, no.
No.
The intent would be potential multi-story commercial with residential, something like that.
As you could see, we were a bit hasty when we put this one together. But mixed use, and ideally something that reuses the existing site, the existing building. It's much more cost-effective to rehab an existing structure than to demolish and build a new, which is not to say we wouldn't entertain an application for the latter, but it seems much less likely that it would be financially capable to follow through with such a development.
Okay. Councilor Zarella.
So, again, I'm pretty certain I know the answer already, but just because there's been a bit of confusion on this over the course of the evening, this one, you're requesting only that we declare it surplus, and then you'll bring us an RFP? Or are we also declaring the disposition on this one?
Whichever the committee determines, I think, given the lack of clarity with the RFP as outlined in the letter, we could certainly bring another one in front of the committee. But absent that, I can tell you whatever you will see in a month, experience, competency, all of those things will be the same. The use we will put as most advantageous, a mixed-use development that uses the existing structure, essentially. And apologies for the typo there.
And do you have any thoughts on what the sort of how the lesser use categories might be defined?
I think the next category would be just strictly commercial use. I don't think there's a case where you, in all likelihood, see solely residential. And then beyond that, I guess the least advantageous would be to demolish the existing structure and have green space. And then the not advantageous would be to leave it dormant.
Or perhaps somewhere in the lower end could be a proposed use that doesn't activate the street.
Right.
We'd probably put that in there somewhere because we want street traffic,
Right.
or foot traffic, rather.
All right, well, in that case, for my part at least, I would be comfortable disposing of the property entirely in this vote. I think we've got a pretty good idea on what the RFP is going to look like, and I don't really think that just going off of past precedents, the committee doesn't typically nitpick the minutia of the RFPs anyway, so.
Okay.
Question, when you ask for, you want to make it residential upstairs, what are we shooting for the upstairs apartments on that way? Market rate housing or affordable?
So I think we're shooting for a diversity of housing options downtown. I think in this case, whatever would be most marketable and most developable. So, I think what we often see with larger housing developments like the Harper Furniture Building, that's a $25, $30 million investment. Those projects need a mix of incomes to really succeed. But then on the other hand, you have 409 Main Street, you have the Hub International Building, you have the Gas and Electric Building, and then 805 Main, a building you know quite well, that is going to be leasing starting April 1, that are all a bit smaller in scale, 4, 5, 6 unit developments, and they're all market rate. So I think smaller scale, you can make market rate work. The larger you get, it becomes more financially advantageous to do sort of a mixed income route. I think in this case, it's actually a pretty big site. So it's not completely out of the question that we could see a mix of incomes. I think it's probably most likely that it would be market rate with significant subsidy, I imagine, through the TDI program and other partnerships we have within the
Is it
downtown.
fair to say, Tom, what we're going to try to do downtown Fitchburg is change the the status quo, the income, because according to the census and according, because I'm a big hump on this, that all in the area of downtown, 50% of your population is poor. Are you trying to change that?
So I think the most important thing to do downtown is to get, as Liz had alluded to, and we were speaking about use, activating the street and getting people in these buildings. So in our storefronts, about a little under 40% of our first floor storefronts are vacant. That number is likely higher with the upper stories. So our largest priority is getting a diverse range of incomes, yes, but not necessarily one way or another, but getting housing to fill those upper stories, getting uses on the first floor to activate the street.
Well, the only reason why I'm not looking for an argument, I'm not trying to go off course here, but if the main population in the downtown area is below the poverty level, and you want to bring merchants downtown, if there's no money, how can you bring merchants? I mean, that's why you get empty storefronts.
Can I jump in on that? Just so let me just the parameters of our subcommittee really are the disposition of property, city property.
I understand that.
And the direction, I think, would be economic development, which is chaired by Councillor Van Hazinga, and that is where I'd love to have this conversation. And this is why. You and I both go pretty far back in the city of Fitchburg in terms of memory and what was here and how things worked. And I think that what we have in our community development is a really stellar, A-class team looking to find the best possible uses of all buildings. And
But my question to him, if he's looking for an RFP for my vote.
Yep.
He wants my vote. And I'm asking a simple question. What kind of rent are we looking at? I'm not, if they're going to just say, our main goal is to fill up the apartments upstairs, but the people don't have any money, what's the sense of spending all this time in research trying to develop downtown? If we're just going to say we're going to develop the upstairs apartments and we're going to make it working man's poor, or whatever you want to call it, affordable housing. That's all I'm saying. Stores need people, and stores need people with money. I'm a window shopper now. I'm 70 years old. I don't buy, I look in the window. They don't make money off of me. They make money off of the young people, younger generations. But they don't make money on me. Because I just look and see and I say, oh, that's too expensive. That's the way I am today.
So I think that the question of 491 is a really exciting, unfolding story, because we haven't, the last time we had a building of this size, and again, the $25 million Moran Square development is exciting, and it's only one of the developments that's happening. I think Fitchburg has a very long history of, looking out for all residents. And that goes back to building the poor farm in the 1840s, right up to the present day, where state agencies, are more involved with the very, very poor. But we're here for them as well. And I think that having a building of this size, having a building of this stability, I'm also looking, if I can just jump ahead to the petitions, Steve Curry said that he and Health Department are in need of a building in which to store recycle bins and health items, and that he didn't think this building would be a good fit, so I'm assuming that's not on the table in any way. Councilor Zarella?
Sure, I just wanted to note, first of all, just to reiterate to Councilor Boschman's concern, that we have been told that it is very likely that the proposal that comes through will involve market rate housing. And I think that's logical. I think that there is very little likelihood of a building that needs to be rehabbed fairly extensively, right? Being snapped up by someone looking to do predominantly affordable housing. We might see a mix, but if it's a mix, that's because it's most financially advantageous to have a mix. I don't think that's a concern. At the same time, though, I think that when it comes to properties like this in particular, we do obviously need to think about the economic impacts and so forth, and I'm all in favor of that. But I think there's a sort of limit to which we should be treating these as social engineering opportunities as opposed to marketing opportunities. You know, we're looking for the private developers or nonprofit developers, whoever, but we're looking for the developers who do this for a living, who have this expertise, to look at the property and say, this is what we can make work here. And if it happens to be very unsuitable, like, say, something that won't involve any street activation or anything, then yeah, maybe we reject it and we say, yeah, that may be the financially advantageous route, but it's not the one we want to do. But for the most part, I think, with the possible exception of Councillor Van Hazinga, I'm not sure that any of us here are qualified to say this use or that use is viable in the market. You know, we can talk about things that we think should be considered, but I don't think we're really in a position to be deciding what uses we should be looking at, but in a very specific way, because I couldn't even look at the property and tell you about how much money it should be worth, much less, you know, what it would cost to rehab it, what it would, you know, what kind of return on investment you would need to make it affordable, so on and so forth. That's not within my expertise, and, you know, maybe it's within some of my colleagues' expertise, but certainly not mine. So I'd prefer to leave it to the market, and you know, we can guide the market, but I don't think we should really be taking the market by the nose.
Well said. Councillor Van Hazinga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate those thoughts, but I think our opportunity here is to decide what the most advantageous uses are that the city would like to see. That we don't necessarily get to see what will happen, because if we're selling to a private developer, they're ultimately responsible for carrying that out. But we do have the opportunity to identify what would be in the best interest of the city here. And I would advocate strongly that the best interest of the city here, the most advantageous use would be for market rate housing. And like you mentioned, Mrs. Skrowski, that we do need housing of all types in the city. In every community needs housing of all types. But an inordinate amount of our low-income housing and income-restricted housing is concentrated downtown. Every single one of the housing developments downtown of substantial scale are either fully subsidized or have significant income-restricted components. And I think that we do need to strive for balance, and the balance downtown is to encourage more market rate housing. Whether it may or may not be financially feasible, that maybe a developer will have to incorporate something, but I think it is the goal that we should strive for downtown, and that would be my recommendation. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean
if you want to make any comment, please.
Well, I was just going to say, we had a developer tour March 7th with the goal of promoting market rate housing downtown with Jay Ash, the president and CEO of the Mass Competitive Partnership, and actually just had a follow-up meeting with him today where we were walking Main Street. We looked at 491, and, you know, certainly there is a need to create a diverse housing options in terms of income and typology. I certainly agree. And, you know, what I think we have done in the past with these RFPs is had, you know, highly advantageous would be 100% market rate proposal, advantageous would be mix of incomes, least advantageous would be 100% affordable. So that is a condition we could include that doesn't write off an affordable housing or a mixed income development. It just states outright that the most advantageous thing would be 100% market rate.
Yeah, and that being said, I think that may be most advantageous, the biggest priority for the city is just getting this redeveloped. That this is the biggest black spot on Main Street that we've dealt with for years. That if it's not the worst property in Main Street, I'm open to other suggestions, but it's the first one that comes to mind all the time. With the broken windows, it's deteriorated storefront, it drags everything else down. It's of substantial size, and if we can get something in there, I'd be ecstatic. So I would fully recommend that we approve the RFP process tonight just to get this started and moving and not to hold it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Final thoughts, Councilor Swalia.
Just to clarify and confirm direction that Councilor Van Hassing has stated, 100% market rate housing in a mixed-use development with commercial on the
Yes.
first floor.
Yep.
Okay. I'm fully in support
Oh,
of
yeah,
that.
no, the mixed use is entirely, this is what works and what everything else is, and by zoning, that's what's required too.
Just want to verify one
Okay,
thing. One
final
thing,
thoughts?
I don't want you guys to think I'm against poor people. I'm not against poor people, and I don't want to kick them out. But I'm just saying that I don't want, I'm not going to repeat myself, but you know what I want what you want, market rate housing downtown. Because if you're going to put businesses down there, businesses need people with money.
Right. and-
I'm sorry to say it, but
Well, and we also want to have the market driving production, so we don't have the vacancies that we see. I think that's another really important element of it. Liz?
I just wanted to add that this may make folks feel better, but the low-income housing tax credits, which are the deep affordable housing tax credits that you see in some of these larger projects, are really meant for larger projects. It's not as likely that there's even subsidy out there for developers to tap into for a smaller project. I can't say that with 100% certainty, but most of the affordable housing tools are on a larger scale and not meant for 6, 8 units. They're meant for 40, 100 units.
And so I think the one, and this was the one sort of in the interest of transparency, potential option where that might be viable is, aside from that property, there's one property owner that owns that entire block, and they own a lot of office development, and office developments are kind of going the way of the dodo these days, right? So they've seen a lot of their tenants leave in recent years. I think there is potential to do a housing development there, and that developer is considering it. Were they to do that and propose to take on 491 Main, there might be scale to drive something like that. That's a possibility. It's not something I've discussed with the developer, but it could be something we'd see. And in that case, I think the only way that would be viable would be for a mix of incomes, which I think is something that we should support. But again, that's not explicitly what we would like to see, it sounds like, and that would be an advantageous proposal, but not the most advantageous.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we accept it the way Andy said it.
Second.
Okay, so we got a motion, we got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, point of clarification, this is with the RFP?
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
RSP,
Aye.
because
Okay,
you already know how we feel about the whole thing.
well, I'm really excited. Before we close this meeting, I would like to
We
say...
have one more item on our agenda.
Oh, God, we do, I got to turn the page. Okay. Councilors Fleming and Hughes to rename Union Street, this is number 175-21, thank you, Councilor Squalia. So this is renaming Union Street located in Ward 5B to Adrian Ford Way. Co-naming Union Street to include Adrian Ford Way and Grant as amended. So this has been referred to City Property, Legislative Affairs, Public Works. Public Works Committee did recommend to amend the petition, so at this point, we are voting, and then it goes to Legislative Affairs, and then back to City Council. Councilor Zarella.
Yes, actually, I didn't even, for some reason, this was not on my list of legislative affairs items, but I will add it. But yes, I think I am definitely in support of the amendment recommended by Public Works. And before we even get to discussion on the overall petition, I would like to make a motion to likewise amend the copy in front of us.
Second.
Accordingly.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved.
So, yeah, because I think now on to the amended version, I think the naming is warranted, but I do think that changing the name of the street entirely so that mail doesn't go to the same place, or so that, GPS is inaccurate and so forth, would be unduly disruptive. So I think the co-naming is a good compromise.
Councilor Squalia?
That's exactly what we felt in the Public Works Committee.
Good.
So move to approve the petition as amended.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and before we close, I would like to put it out there that I'm very happy being the chair, but I would like to know that we will have one of our members take the minutes next time who is not Councillor Van Hazinga, since he is kindly doing it this time. Do we have a volunteer to take our minutes for our next meeting?
Don't have to worry about that. I'm not a writer, so I'm not doing it.
Councillor Squalia, Councillor Zarella.
I would be terrible at it, that I didn't take the minutes when I was chair.
Well, it's hard for me to do both.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just saying I would be absolutely terrible at it.
No, I'm not doing it.
You won't do it?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll figure it out then.
Okay.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.